Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Welcome to the Outer Realm, everybody. It is our Wednesday night segment. We're broadcasting live on United Public Radio Network 105.3 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing folks over at Folgers Coffee who have been on this journey with us since day one. Also, big thank you to Dr. Snick, aka Justin Snicker, the sonic surgeon, for his sponsorship of his music and his voice for our intro and our outro. You can find his music pretty much anywhere that good music can be found, so check him out. Tonight we will be welcoming back Ryan Musgrave Evans to the show, and tonight's going to be a little bit different. We're going to be talking about Spring-Heeled Jack, Dogman, Skinwalkers, other what he calls crypto-terrestrials, and why they're drawn to the locations that you find them. I guess the best example to use in this case would be Skinwalker Ranch. So tonight you'll be able to be on all our usual platforms. I am seeing we are on, let's start with Facebook, Joe Montaldo, UFO Undercover, Canada's Most Haunted Moi, Outer Realm with Amelia and myself. As you can see, Bubbles is back in the house. Yeah, she is. News on the flip side, UFO Paranormal, United Public Radio. Then we jump over to the Outer Realm YouTube page. So Michelle DeRoche at the Outer Realm, UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials, UFO Paranormal Radio. And I see the chat room is already filling up. Hello, Dolly. Hello, Wayne. Hello, Joshua. Adriana. Yeah, so we are definitely filling up. We're going to start the show before we get into the habitual, bio waiting for our guests. Every now and then, we have some guests that just really go above and beyond, and we love all our guests, but they get really, really creative. And Hamilton White, who you guys have seen on with Carl Cookson from the Lost Relics of the Knights Templar, he's been doing his versions of Folgers commercials. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to play it for you guys. So ignore everything else in there. It's just one thing we're looking for, not everything else in the screen. We're not promoting everyone else.
We're not promoting any of those crisps, chips, or any of that.
No, exactly. So we're going to hang tight, and we're going to play this right now. Here we go. Guys, have a listen.
Or if you're watching. I can't hear anything.
Oh, for God's sakes. Let me go in and start this over. Okay,
right.
Here we go.
Well, here we are at the special request of Michelle and Amelia, who want me to do a TV internet commercial for Folgers Coffee.
Folgers.
UK
Folgers.
Wonders of Folgers Coffee if you're out in the wilderness, which is sort of where I am. I mean, there's trees and stuff, so that's out in the woods, isn't it? Yeah, definitely out in the woods. Right, okay, well, here's my tent, which is where I'm staying. Various things in my tent, so if we get in here...
Ignore all that, just saying.
Oh my gosh.
For you people in America or Canada or I don't know that part of the world,
keeping it with tonight's topic,
Michelle, I ought to read about this thing here.
Have we had that author on?
Things. Apparently that's got something to do with I don't know, creatures that lurk around in the woods. I don't know. I should read that later. I don't know who they are, but something about apes.
Big shout out to that author.
This is my tent. This is a very good tent because, as you can see, I've actually installed a bar in it, which is one of the essentials if you're out camping.
Good choice in a
Look at
certain
that, drink
beverage that I'm
Folgers
looking at.
coffee. What a great plug. Now then,
Yeah.
to actually
UK
make some Folgers
Folgers.
coffee, I've got this little device here that I bought in the shop, which heats water and also enables you to burn your fingers. And this thing here that had some water in, but I spilt it. But not to worry. What we can do for going out.
Oh my god.
Around here.
I have to mute my mic because I'm laughing.
Folgers coffee. Right, your mug here. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Now then. I'm sure it's very relaxing when you're out in the woods to drink fabulous coffee. So let's go with it, shall we? Right. Folgers coffee. What do you need?
He has a future on TikTok.
Okay, coffee beans.
Does it sound like a Folgers?
Beans. There we go.
Last I looked, Folgers isn't bubbly.
No, exactly. But it's the thought that counts. We have to
My
cut it
gosh,
off
thank
before it
you
gets a
so
little bit-
much.
Yeah, before it
Yeah.
gets a little bit, too chaotic.
Yeah.
Yes, but I love the sign. This is a part 2. So basically, we have other. I'm sure there will be more. We'll have to talk about the additional.
He's there for the week,
additional-
so who knows?
Yeah. So we're going to just stop the screen. There we go. Now we're back to normal.
Oh.
I know.
That was amazing. I love that.
I know.
Sorry, I
It's
need
like-
a haircut.
You're
so
right.
bad.
We
Hi,
love it. Now we
darling.
definitely want Folgers coffee.
We do. We want
That's it.
Folgers
And
and
the-
non-carbonated. Non-carbonated.
Linda, hello. I know. There's a lot of stuff in there, but that's what we have to talk about.
No, that was Hamilton's dinner.
Sure.
There, it was a roast chicken.
There we go.
That's right.
Oh, it's always a lot of fun. He's always a lot of fun. So,
Yeah.
But we love the effort that he makes, because I don't think anybody's actually done a commercial. Anybody wants to do any little, minute clips of them drinking Folgers and talking about Folgers, send them on in. You never know. You might just end up on the outer realm in front of a few million people.
Oh my gosh. When he messaged me, he says, I'm camping and nobody wants to come with me, but that's okay. And he's on his own. He said, I think I'll just make another Folgers commercial. I said, well, get it in soon so we can play it on the show.
I know. I didn't expect all the bonus,
posted like a few minutes later.
products. So
Yeah, I knew he would probably have something to do with that carbonated beverage. It is carbonated, isn't it?
I'm just glad he shot the little video before he had too many of the carbonated beverages.
Yeah, I don't
Because
think
it
he would
could
have been
been
able to
really
manage
interesting.
the camera. if he
I think
had.
in part 1 I got a little bit bullied into sending over certain
Oh, Linda Dillman. Hi, Linda. I
certain
didn't see MG. No,
cups.
You
They're
don't
making
want
their
to
way
know.
over to England as
Yeah.
we speak.
you don't want to know what he poured in that cup. Hi, Wayne. Hello,
Hey,
everybody.
Wayne.
Hello, Michelle. Yeah.
With a big. See, this is a fantastic idea. But I thought the Bigfoot would be kind of nice because it keeps it in a little bit in what we're talking about tonight. So that's it. Exactly. Wayne Murphy, Team Temple North America, our newest
Woohoo.
project. That's right. You guys have to start standing by and waiting to see what's coming up with that. Yeah. You heard me. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. So
Hi, Janie. Thanks for retweeting.
yeah.
We're on Twitter. I know.
We're not airing on it tonight though.
No.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're both on Twitter and we share things. I just want to put it out there because I closed an account and at 15K like years ago because I have a hard time with Twitter as much as I love it. It's a full-time job. And I don't have the kind of time it takes in the dedication to stay in those circles, but I'm trying. So if you're listening and you have a Twitter, please come and follow us and we'll follow you back. And this way you can keep up with things during the week and that. But and I keep all the archives, like our best archives are up there, the ones I can access, but that's another story. But anyways, yeah, So I just thought I'd put it out there because I'm literally like at 70 something. I can't believe I closed that damn account. I should have just left it open. But if you're on Twitter, please come and see us.
Absolutely. Okay, so we are waiting. Ryan will be coming in a few minutes if we want to go over his quick condensed
I am.
bio.
Yes, it's yeah. I am going to just bring it up because I have it on my screen. And Ryan has been on our show before. He is an author who resides in Victoria, Australia, and he is also a teacher. And he has a Bachelor of Arts. He's got so many credits. There's so many to list tonight. There's just too many, but they're on our page, on our group page on Facebook. He is also a private language tutor of Irish and Scots Gaelic and a full-time nurseryman and grafter. He is the author of speculative fiction novels, Dead Stars and Dead Womb of the Grave, available in Amazon. And he is a relief substitute primary elementary teacher and a fluent speaker of Irish and Scottish Gaelic, insatiable preoccupation with comparative linguistics, philosophy, folklore, religious studies, and all research into the paranormal.
We welcome back Ryan Musgrave Evans.
Hello.
Bubbles went quiet. I'm like,
oh, I stopped for a second. Sorry. I'm just getting back after 6 weeks, so it's crazy. How's the weather there? You're heading into
cold.
the fall?
That's cold. Yeah, well, it's winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, last time you were on, it was freezing here. So I feel like it's okay. That's right.
A fair trade.
We're heading into summer in 3 weeks, and you're heading
nice.
into winter, right?
Yep. It's raining, cold. We have fairly moderate weather here in this part of Australia anyway. It never gets really, really hot, and it never gets really, really cold. But at the moment, it's as cold as it gets, basically. Yeah.
That's not bad.
Wow.
Yeah, I like the cold.
Do you? Yeah, I like the fall. I like the fall a lot. That's my favorite time of year. You're always comfortable when you're outside. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love autumn leaves. And in Australia, deciduous trees aren't native to Australia, really, or at least I don't think there are many that are. But we've still got heaps and heaps of, introduced species. So Australia is full, especially around cities and built-up areas, full of, North American and European deciduous trees, oaks, elm, beech ash, and things like that. So it's lovely this time of year. I really love it. Yeah.
Very good.
Well, nice. We appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us. And
thanks so much for having me back.
It's our pleasure.
Are you kidding? Yeah, you have some interesting ththings to talk about. Where would you like to start this time around? I know we bounced some ideas around, and I said, I said, okay, well, we'll just let you take it, and we'll keep up.
Cool. Thanks, Michelle. Sounds good. Okay,
all right.
Brace yourselves. Maybe I'll quickly just. I'll just quickly say who I am again, just in case people.
Yes, please.
I'm Ryan. I mean, you did a bit of an intro for me anyway, but I'm 43-year-old Australian. I've been experiencing what people might call high strangeness all my life, but particularly in the last 10 or so years, it's really amped up. And the people, the beings that have interacted with me, visited me, abducted me all of my life, call themselves the Mudjana. And I wrote a book that's primarily an investigation into their presence here through folklore as elves and fairies, where they're interpreted through those lenses in old times. And then nowadays, they're usually considered to be something like ETs or aliens. But their masks have sort of changed. They're indigenous to this planet, although their history is, quite complicated. It's become my passion to investigate them now. So I've just been bitten by the bug of becoming an absolute ufology and supernatural nerd. I really can't stop. I'm just learning all the time. But my real focus is to locate them in the literature, in ancient literature, and then up until modern times and modern cases of abduction and close encounter phenomena and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But maybe I could quickly go into talking about something that I was going to talk about last time, but I don't think we had time
Anything you'd like.
Yeah, which was some of your audience might be familiar with the legend of Spring-Heeled Jack.
Yes, I
Spring-Heeled
am
Jack was
as well. Yeah.
This creature or phenomenon and a character, a person, a supernatural entity that haunted England in the 1800s and made a real nuisance of himself and scared. Some of the stuff was, fairly innocuous, like he'd scare people and things like that. But some of the claims are quite terrible, where allegedly this being picked up a woman once and threw her off a bridge. And so there's a continuum of really sort of innocuous stuff to malignant stuff. But the reason that I was particularly interested in this character, who started making an appearance around 1837 in London, and sort of tailed off by the early 1900s, is his appearance and his behaviour. Now, the beings called the Mudgeonah, sometimes when I've seen them and interacted with them, they wear skin-tight dark suits. Now, sometimes they'll wear cloaks with these as well. Glowing red eyes at night, prosthetic claws on their fingers, a kind of a technology on their chest, and also the apparent ability to defy gravity, to levitate, is amongst some of the characteristics of this high-end technology suit, which is like a soldier suit, like a super soldier suit that gives them lots of other powers as well: super strength, speed, intangibility, so they can pass through solid objects. But with the Spring-Heeled Jack was described by people as being tall and lean and gaunt, which is also a factor with the Mudgeonah. Skin-tight suit, a cloak, glowing red eyes, metallic claws, and the ability to leap over coaches and hedges and up 20 foot high onto buildings in a single bound and things like this. So this is so when I first found out about this guy, this being, I was just intrigued, because I was thinking perhaps this is an example of a boa suit being seen in England in those times. Now, if it is the Mudgeonah, I'm terribly embarrassed, because they were misbehaving something chronic. But apparently as well that they were impervious to bullets, where this guy, if it was just one, maybe it was several individuals. If this is all true, of course, this is a narrative, a story, but it strikes me as perhaps having a ring of truth to it. There was an army barracks at Aldershot in Surrey at the time that had 10,000 troops stationed at it at any given time. This huge army barracks, where Spring-Heeled Jack would go in and scare the soldiers and run his hand over their face while they were sleeping, and they'd take shots at him and they couldn't kill him, and he'd leap around and escape. And so this interesting and bizarre character may possibly also, legend has it, have given rise to the Batman character created by Bob Kane in comics. Because now Bob Kane himself never claimed to have been influenced by this idea, but around about 1903, I think it was the last known case where someone claimed to have had interaction with this Spring-Heeled Jack. And then it all sort of, I think Penny Dreadfuls, those old comics and things like that, they'd write a lot of stories about him, and the gossip and the narrative around him sort of went from him being a villain to maybe being a kind of benevolent superhero, maybe an aristocrat that had a cave as a bit of a hermit. This is just sort of like the stories that developed over time about him, where he sort of made a metamorphosis into maybe being something like a superhero, an aristocrat with a lot of money that would creep out at night from his cave to fight crime. And some people have suggested that that Bob Kane may have been influenced by this. Now you've got, billionaire Bruce Wayne. Right. It's debatable whether Bruce Wayne's a good guy or a bad guy. I remember when I was a kid, my dad always used to say to me, Batman's a bad guy. He's there to maintain wealth disparity. He's protecting the rich from the poor and all this. So when I was a little kid, I was like, okay, so maybe Batman's bad. But but the idea that there's this tension between Spring-Heeled Jack perhaps being evil or perhaps being a good guy is interesting, and it tickles me to think there's a possibility that, just a possibility, it's just conjecture, but that we have the comic book character in the movie character of Batman in some kind of roundabout way due to Mudgeonor influence in England in the 1800s.
Mm.
But,
Yeah.
but there you go. So that's been fascinating me for a little bit. So I'll end that rant there, and we can continue to something else if you like.
I love Batman, Linda.
Yeah, we'll just put up comments every now and then.
Especially when Bale played him. Like, I feel like there was never a character like that. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
I love Batman.
His version.
Yeah.
Christian Bale's version.
Christian Bale was for me, the ultimate and the epitome of all Batmans. And I can't watch the new movie. Sorry, Robert Pattinson. You're still Edward to me in Twilight. So
I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, I have no interest in it.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's been typecast as, I mean, people maybe can't watch Batman with that guy in it and not see him as that brooding, pouting vampire. So,
right? Yeah. It's really tough, but yet he's done a lot of films where he's amazing, and you don't see that. He's a really great actor, but it took me a little bit of time to warm up to Ben Affleck, but the remake of Justice League, I don't know if you've seen it. It's very dark, film noir, very, very cinematic. If you get an opportunity to watch it. I know it's slow moving, but from the cinematic side, it is unbelievable and worth the time.
I haven't seen that one yet. The Snyder Cut, it's called. Yeah,
yes.
I've really got to get around to watching
so good, Ryan. Yeah, you're going to need 4 hours, and it goes slow the first couple hours, and then it flies. But it's unbelievably really well done. But you have to look at it in an art point of view. You can't perspective. You can't watch it and expect to see the Justice League like you did. But it's almost like they're showing you behind the scenes. But anyways,
cool, yeah.
Now that I took you off, let's go back.
Cool.
Sorry.
The other Batman, the Justice League one, I didn't really enjoy that, so that'd be nice to see a version.
This one, then you'll really enjoy this one because it gives a perspective from outside of everything, and it's dark. I love it.
Yeah, cool. It was Michael Keaton's Batman that really introduced me to Batman when I was a kid. That old one with Jack Nicholson as the Joker.
Yes. Danny DeVito as Penguin.
Yeah, that was Batman Returns, the second, with Michael Keaton too, yeah. So Michael Keaton is sort of like an unusual choice for Batman, but I think he sort of pulled it off, you know. But still, anyway, yeah. So what else do you want to talk about?
Well, that's up to you. We talked about what I'd like to touch up on a little bit is we talked a little bit about, I mean, here we call them dogmen. Wolf people, wolves. We talked about different cryptids, Bigfoot, skinwalkers. In your opinion, with your research, what are they? Are they interdimensional, dimensional? Are they extraterrestrial? You're saying that they're more based here, crypto-terrestrial. And why do they choose specific locations? And again, I'll use the example of skinwalkers in Skinwalker Ranch, which is an anomaly in its own right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the idea of, I think, of werewolves and dogmen, in my opinion, now there may be such a thing as werewolves and dogmen in some other sense. I'm not sure, but in my opinion, at least a lot of the lore about dogmen that's developed over the ages and werewolves has come from people witnessing Mudgeonor in boa suits in particular. Part of their cryptolect or their camouflage language as well that the Mudgeonor use is mimicking wildlife. Right. And they have barking and growling language. They also have twittering bird-like songs. They also have sounds that are more like monkeys and foxes and things like that, depending on where they are. And it's to fly under the radar, really, so that they can be having interactions with each other. And if you're out in the forest and you hear a distinctively human voice, of course your ears crop up. But if you're out in the forest and you hear, growling or twittering birds and things like that, it just blends into the background. So, growling dark beings moving at really high speed and galloping on all fours, which is another feature of theirs. Their arms, relative to the rest of their anatomy, are longer than ours, and it comes more naturally to them to gallop on all fours. Their children in particular do it, but sometimes the adults do it as well. And they wear prosthetic claws for defense as well. So barking, if you've got this creature running at you with glowing red eyes, barking and growling with claws, people are going to associate it with a dog, of course. They're going to think Wolfman and whatnot. Also, they have a capacity to, with their telepath technology and their helmets, to cast a kind of a glamour on you, to instill in your mind false understandings about what they are and their appearance. They can change their appearance by warping your idea of what they are in your mind without actually them physically necessarily wanting to.
So we're the ones that they're leading us to believe we're seeing a certain image that's not really what they are.
They can do that, especially, and they can also feed on your own beliefs and expectations as to what you're going to see or what you want to see. The idea that they could even make you see them look even more dog-like than they actually are is a possibility as well. Not that I'm sure why they'd want to do that to you and scare you like that, but still. So whether or not there are actually dogmen out there and werewolves and things like that's another thing again. But I think these guys, a lot of the time it's their suits. Now, having said that, there's also a factor in all of this, and you especially have it, as you said, Michelle, at Skinwalker Ranch, but in lots of different places throughout the US and also in Australia, especially like ranches and farms and things like that, especially places that are bordering on wilderness areas, state parks, national parks, where you will have people seeing giant wolves the size of small horses, or
like dire wolves, that sort of thing.
Dire wolves,
yeah.
And other kinds of giant canid-like creatures with the big bushy tails that look like some kind of megafauna that should have died out millions of years ago. Or giant hominids that really, according to established science, should not exist at all. But then we have ideas, of course, of Sasquatch and Bigfoot and whatnot. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that Sasquatch and Bigfoot don't exist as societal creatures somewhere on the edge of our world. But there is this element where there's this overlap with what I'm calling crypto-terrestrials, or the Mudgeonah, hidden earthlings, these people, and these strange kind of monstrous beings that seem to be physical and tangible. They can attack cattle. They can rip up fences. They leave footprints. They could even be shot and have pieces of themselves being blown out the back, like famously the dire wolf in the case of Skinwalker Ranch, where the rancher was actually shooting it and it had no pain response. Or it didn't seem to. And then just trotted off. And then they follow these creatures, and quite often they'll go around to copse of trees and the prints will stop, like they've been beamed up, Scotty. They just disappeared. So I've been calling these creatures transient life forms, TLFs, because they seem to be transient or transitory, in that they don't really have some kind of established true essence of being, almost like they're tools, almost like they're productions, almost like they're maybe biological creations, robots, perhaps made out of DNA of some kind, of genuine creatures that existed once, of dire wolves or some other kinds of canids or hominids that once were, that are no more, but that they have. But this is conjecture, I'm just, this is my theory about what some of these beings might be, but that the crypto-terrestrials, the people, use them as guards, as guard dogs, to over the top of their subterranean habitations, to keep people away, to scare you, and they deliberately choose animals that are monstrous to us, that would scare us, which means they don't have to come up themselves to keep people away necessarily. They can let these creatures do it. And in the sense of the famous Skinwalker Ranch case, written about by Colin Callagher and George Knapp, and then the documentary made by Jeremy Corbell, whatnot. It seems to me that the motive of the beings, in that case, the crypto-terrestrials, was to get rid of that family. It was psychological warfare. They were not welcome. probably for multiple reasons. The crypto-terrestrials had deigned them to be inappropriate. They had dogs, they had guns, they're dangerous to their children. They were trying to
even
move
the
them along.
indigenous of the area were terrified, and they wouldn't even speak of skinwalkers on average, and they had very healthy respect for it. It just seems like Skinwalker Ranch and other properties along that whole mesa seem to have very unusual things going on there, ranging from extraterrestrial yeah, Linda, there are portals. There's just a lot of really rare things going on that you just don't seem to see all that, like
All
a
in
mix
one
of everything
spot.
in one place.
Yeah.
Like Robert Bigelow, when they were doing a lot of their science experiments, whatever it is that they found, all of a sudden it's like, no, we're done here. And I know now it's ongoing with a whole new set of scientists and people, and they're coming up with spectacular things. No one seems to have captured any cryptids at this point, though. Like it's just very, very extraterrestrial based or UFO based, and anomalies with the property itself with high levels of EMF and magnetics and things like that. So, are you dealing with, so if you're dealing with like what's a skinwalker? I mean, if there are portals there, because there's high levels of paranormal activity as well, is it, are they just coming in and out? Are they based here? Are they based elsewhere? Like, what's your thought on that?
With Skinwalker Ranch, definitely there is a habitation under there of crypto-terrestrials. Mudgina probably, and then there's another kind called Zebetina, which are small, dark, brown beings with claws that have big dark eyes, but more normally you'll see them with a helmet on that has pointy ears. And they're about 4 foot tall. These beings, they live underground, flesh and blood beings related to us. Sometimes I call them sister species, but maybe it's more accurate to call them a daughter species because they have this affiliation with us where they're kind of a future version of us in one way. But but as for portals and things like that, the Mudgina have what they call Agaling, which is the black star, which is a place that is beyond duality, that is neither this nor that is a world of potential before it's actualized. And they can manipulate this plane so that they can duck into it and appear anywhere they like, basically, or pretty much anywhere they like. And portals, they can move in and out, so they can travel from one end of the earth to the other.
Well, they've got a triangle also in there that things happen.
Oh, okay, so, is this on the documentary? I haven't been keeping up to.
It's definitely they've discovered it.
Skinwalker documentaries.
Yeah, they've discovered it during the research that they're currently doing with the series. Just with experiments that they've done, and there just seems to be this triangle area.
Okay, right. That's on the property and covers the property, or that's interesting. Triangular.
I know.
There isn't anything that's not there. That's the whole thing. It's like the entire field of paranormal is on those, that acreage. It's like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah. There's a sister case in Colorado, I think, the Colorado Ranch. I can't remember the name of the ranch.
Really?
For a long, long time. Timothy Good wrote about it in one of his books, and different people have been talking about it for years, but it has a list of identical phenomena to Skinwalker Ranch.
I think I know the one you're talking about. It's called is it Stardust? The Stardust Ranch?
Not Stardust. I think I've forgotten the lady's name, but the head of MUFON in Colorado grew up there.
Right. Like a lot of extraterrestrials and stuff like that are there all the time, right?
Yeah.
As well.
And disembodied voices, Bigfoot, other kinds of cryptids, poltergeist activity, portals opening and closing. And in that case, the rancher years and years ago met the beings responsible. So I put this in my book. In my first book, I talk about a bit about this. But in that Colorado Ranch case,
it's actually called. Sorry, Ryan. It's actually called Colorado Ranch.
Okay, so it's a different another one altogether.
It's actually called Colorado Ranch. You had it right.
Okay, so that's a whole other was
Yeah,
another
there could be
one then.
another one. Yeah.
And he met the beings responsible, the beings behind it, where he actually felt compelled, I think, to walk to a certain hill, and he met two people, thin people with helmets on their heads, with skin-tight suits that were changing color, big blue eyes, blonde hair. So this is a typical Mudgeonner. He said they were only 5'6", so that's not very tall for a Mudgeonner or a tall white, but they take a long time to grow. So a Mudgeonner that's 5'6" is probably going to be about 80 years old anyway, 70 or 80 years. And then by the time they get to 100, they're about 6 foot. They keep growing. They end up being 9 to 10 foot tall once they get to really advanced ages, like 700 or 800 years. But he actually met them, and they said to him, "We're going to allow you to remember this. We don't really want you here. This isn't really working out for us, is it? We're going to have to come to some other kind of agreement." And they let him remember, and he wandered off. But there's an example of a rancher in one of these situations where there's, a plethora of different kinds of high strangeness that normally we wouldn't associate with each other. And then he actually got to meet the dudes behind it. And it's these guys. It's these chalk white, when you actually see them without any suits on, when they're letting you remember what they look like.
Right.
They it's these people, for the most part, most of the time, the beings that Charles Hall called tall whites that he wrote about in the Millennial Hospitality books, even though we presume them to be aliens and not have an evolutionary connection to Earth, they actually do. They're indigenous to this planet, and they've returned to bolster their failing, unraveling genomes because they're not the healthiest. But anyway, yeah.
So what is your thought then on like, again, let's just backtrack to Skinwalker Ranch quickly, because what is a Skinwalker? We know what the indigenous lore is, and because it seems to have that wolf tendency as well. Do you feel that
it is one of them? They're Mudgeonner. That's, in my opinion, that's just them. It's another cultural interpretation of the same race that is responsible for most of our mythologies and folklores, and it's given rise, in my opinion, to a lot of our religious beliefs over the years, because they were all present in the ancient Middle and Near East, in ancient times, in Mesopotamia and Egypt, fueling a lot of our later religious systems that are based on these older religious systems and things like that. Not necessarily deliberately. I'm not necessarily saying that they are, through some kind of, social engineering, making religions for us and all that kind of stuff. But just that them being an empirical reality, a presence that sometimes impinges on our world, we as humans that are storytelling creatures try to fill in the blanks. And we say, what is this? Is this some kind of god? And then we make up backstories as to how that relates to our worldview, already established worldview, and blah, blah, blah. But so skinwalkers, in my opinion, are just another facet of cultural interpretation by the Utes. Was that in Utah? Or when they were interacting with Mudgeonner. That they would be interacting with these underground people that would come out, would cast glamours on them, change their shape, or make them think that they had changed their shape, run around on all fours, barking and growling. One of the handy little elements of the telepath technology that the Mudgeonner use is to be able to instill irrational fear into a person if they decide that they're a threat. And so this kind of response that you get in these cases of high strangeness, where people are out in the forest and suddenly they just feel a bit weird and they have a baseless fear sort of grips them. And then they might start walking away, and then it will just pass. And if they go back to that same spot, it'll be back again. This is something that they use. It takes them years and years. They start training from when they're kids to use this telepath tech to manipulate the minds of Homo sapiens, to instill fear in us, or the opposite, to instill feelings of love and acceptance.
Mhm.
If they think that that is a better angle to remove you as a threat, depending on what kind of personality you are. But yeah. So in cases of Skinwalker Ranch, you know, the family at Skinwalker Ranch explained experiencing that kind of stuff. They saw the Mudgeonor there as well. You know, one of the craft that the Mudgeonor use, like I said before, in the Colorado Ranch case, the guy met the Mudgeonor. But in the Skinwalker Ranch case, they saw the Mudgeonor anyway, because they saw their craft, not only the big black triangles and boomerangs and whatnot, but the small white craft that are sometimes called RVs, or I think it's probably the same thing that people would say Tic Tacs nowadays.
Yeah.
And they can be quite small, the size of a car, larger, the size of an RV or bus, larger again, and look like, and they're white normally, or pale grey. They can be as the size more like a train carriage, or a diesel engine, with a series of windows along the side, passenger transport. But at Skinwalker Ranch, they saw these things floating around the property and tried to give chase, and they'd lift up and go over hedges and things like that. And the wife actually saw one parked out in the field, and the door was open, the light was on inside, and a guy walked out, and he was a giant dressed in tight black outfit with a visor, which is something that the Mudgeonor sometimes wear. And in my book I show that there's another case where the tall, fair beings with blue eyes apparently have been seen wearing these visors as well. But and in that case, in the Skinwalker Ranch case, they left huge footprints. So the next day, when the husband and wife went to check where the craft had been seen, these giant footprints, dirty big feet, which of course someone that's 8 foot tall is going to have, you know. Yeah, it's definitely, the Skinwalker Ranch case is definitely them, Cryto-Terrestrials, the Mudgeonor. And you know, so I don't want to be sort of like, you know, sometimes I get myself in trouble sometimes with people that are interested in paranormal stuff, because they say, "Oh, you just say everything's the Mudgeonor." You know, it's pretty boring.
Some would argue it.
Come on. You know, in my opinion, most stuff is. You know, probably not all stuff, but most.
Well, is there any being like let's go with vampires, for example. There's questions for you with respect to that, because there's a lot of theories with that. He says, I have a question for Ryan with respect to vampires. I think this is a two-parter. First of all, do you have stories of vampires in your country? And secondly, do you feel that perhaps they are extraterrestrial in nature, which is something some people do think?
Well, again, I know that I'm very predictable, but I think a lot of the Mudgeonor presence has given rise to vampiric lore, especially when you're talking about tall, pale, gaunt beings in hooded robes levitating and shooting across the fields, and especially like their hands are really long. They have 4 really, really long fingers, like half as long as our fingers, again, their fingers are, with a small vestigial thumb that's only about half as long as our thumb though. But these long hands, skeletal looking. In Australia, I'm not quite sure about Indigenous ideas in Australia about vampires, and whether I'd imagine there would be. Actually, yeah, there are actually. I've forgotten what they're called though. In some of the nations, the countries in Queensland, I think I was reading, has something like that, but where they had these dark beings that would come out of the earth and would drink people's blood or eat people and things like this as part of their dream lore, but the dreaming. But I don't know much about that. And when it comes to vampiric lore, not that I know that much about it, but with European vampiric lore, I think nowadays there's a much stronger line between vampires and zombies. But I remember in the past when I'd been interested in researching vampires, that in ancient European lore, vampires and zombies were kind of the same thing. They were revenants. And people would, some of the descriptions of vampires bursting out of graves and stuff like that sound to us now sort of more like zombies, all decayed, and the notion of sort of like a tall, aristocratic, pale, handsome, sexy vampire guy or something like that is sort of more of an invention of like the 1800s or something like that.
But there's
But
definitely a lot of stories. Look at the Count Saint Germain, for example, who spent a lot of time in
oh
New
yeah,
Orleans, right, from Europe and
yeah,
Paris, and I mean, I think the last sighting of him was like in the 1970s or something crazy like that, and yet there was like paintings with him. There were eyewitness accounts of what they like what they said he looked like back into the 1700s.
yeah. Wow. Yeah, yeah,
So I don't know, like that's one prime
yeah. It's
example.
incredible.
So you tend to think like, are they extraterrestrial or just like
Yeah,
dimensional?
yeah. That I remember being interested in Count Saint Germain a long, long time ago, and learning a bit about him. Yeah, that's just such an interesting case, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, you
for sure.
think about it, it's just like he's got to either be traveling back and forth, like time traveling, or it's got to be a shapeshifter, or it's got to be extraterrestrial. It's got these really long lifespans who just kind of keep popping in, or
Yeah.
we just don't have that, we know of, the capability to have that kind of a lifespan.
No, that's right. That's yeah, and there were
Yeah.
people that were still alive that could vouch for him as being the same person. Sometimes, wasn't there as well, where people that had known him when they were a kid in one
Yeah.
context, many, many years later, they were like octogenarians or something, and would say that's definitely the same dude, hasn't
Mhm.
aged.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, time travel is an interesting idea with that. I hadn't thought of that one. Maybe that's him. Yeah,
That theory pops up a lot more now. We're a little
Yeah,
bit
well,
more open about it.
it
Yeah.
does,
Yeah, it does. You start to wonder even about shadows. We were talking about that with a guest.
Yeah.
Are the shadows or are they time travelers? I believe it was Mike Rixiger, right?
Yeah, Mike Rixiger
Yeah.
thought that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, you can see it. I wasn't sure if you could.
I can see. Yeah, I've got my glasses on. I am just coming back from 6 weeks of being
Yes, I wasn't
sick,
sure if you
Ryan.
could
So
see.
I'm
You
so
can't
sorry.
see.
I'm out of I feel like
Okay.
I'm coming for the first day of school. Linda Dillman asks, do you think the paranormal or aliens have infiltrated our governments, or are they just greedy humans?
Loaded questions.
Wow.
yeah.
I miss Linda. I'm glad she's back.
I think. Well, I think that the powers that be, that whatever you want to call them, like the shadow government or the power structure that's behind elected officials and elected governments, I do believe there are these entities, these groups that of, the top 1% of the 1% that own most of the wealth and all that kind of stuff, that are making all the decisions behind closed doors. I think they, in my opinion, are frightened of the crypto-terrestrial presence, and sometimes take into consideration what the crypto-terrestrials are doing and how they're behaving to dictate what kind of course of action I'm going to take. But I don't know whether, the idea of, crypto-terrestrials controlling the government and actually like telling them what to do and this, that, and that. I don't necessarily think it's like that, but I do think that sometimes these uber powerful people are influenced by the crypto-terrestrials if the crypto-terrestrials bother to make it known what their opinion is about certain things. And I'm very certain that the time has run out when it comes to environmental issues with this planet. Not just global warming. Lots of people say global warming is not us; it's a natural cycle.
Yeah.
Climate change. Now, but if climate change is natural and it's not to do with us, that's still a moot point, really, anyway, because we are responsible for destroying so much of the environment, destroying species, really messing up our planet's biosphere in lots of different ways. Otherwise, anyway, and that it's a really weird thing to me that certain powerful people in the world now are very much on board the push for new technologies to get us off fossil fuels, something which just not too long ago in the past they would never have been. Fossil fuel industry is just making powerful people too much money. But all of a sudden, they're playing to a different tune, a lot of these powerful people, and they're like, hold on a second. If the boat goes down, we're going with it, and it looks like they're starting to sort of play along those lines. there is a distinct possibility that they've been influenced by the crypto-terrestrials, because the crypto-terrestrials are here now again, living in our Earth, and they do not want our biosphere to be damaged. They want to return it to something of an earlier pre-industrial human stage in that respect, and they don't have a sense of humor about it, you know, like so. So in that respect, sometimes I think maybe the crypto-terrestrials have an influence on world politics, geopolitics, and things like that.
I agree. Just putting up comments here.
Yeah.
So Amelia, do you want to catch it or?
Sure. Dolly Saffron says we are responsible for destroying ourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually.
And this one here.
I agree.
R.A. and Horace are related.
Raw.
Oh, it's Raw. Sorry. I don't know much about this. I'm learning. Birdmen or dogmen, they were worshipped in Egypt. I do know what that figure looks like, though. Dolly, you'd be impressed. I've been watching all that ancient stuff. Yeah.
I think some of the old religious systems from the Middle East and from ancient Egypt and stuff were inspired by the crypto-terrestrials. But to what extent, I'm not sure. You know,
but it's like anything. Everything is the ancients revered. You know, even different figures like that we have been taught now are evil and don't acknowledge, and you know, we've been given a whole other set of values to live by.
But they also didn't have a government then. Just saying. Tamara says the descriptions. Yeah, the descriptions of crypto-terrestrials sounds very much like the descriptions of the jinn, as they can appear to be dogs, shadows, different elements. Yeah, they're tricksters.
The jinn, virtually like you read about the jinn, and they are identical to the Celtic fairy faith idea of fairies and elves. Not fairies with little ladies with wings and elves like Santa's helpers at the North Pole, but older ideas like in Gaelic what you call Nasheechan. That they're almost identical. The Arabic ideas about what jinn are and the Gaelic ideas about what fairies and elves were. And yes, I am very, very sure that the jinn are the crypto-terrestrials. That this is the same idea. To say just cultural understandings, interpretations of a flesh and blood, highly sophisticated, advanced race. Even though they are flesh and blood and just as physical as we are, they nonetheless have advanced technologies that are so robust that they can, travel through portals. They can move to different dimensional realities, different timelines, different worlds. But they are able to do this by way of nuts and bolts technologies, which sort of sounds like a contradiction, but these ideas of physical and spiritual, or material and non-material, that those dichotomies really start to break down when you've got a group of people that have a sophistication that's just so advanced that it's difficult for us to cognize, to conceptualize. You know?
Yes.
Michael Kennedy says, I think it is very telling that Bob Bigelow spent so much of his own money studying what's going on at Skinwalker, and now is putting all of his money towards consciousness studies and the afterlife.
So
very good point, Michael.
Yeah, what did he find there?
I haven't seen all of those shows.
He shut down, like, just, okay, we're done here. And then all of a sudden, that's right.
Is it fear or is it enlightenment? It'd be interesting to see which one of those two caused him to do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they were using a fair bit of money from the Pentagon as well. They were being financed. Colin Kelleher.
That speaks volumes, Ryan.
Colin Kelleher and George Knapp, their more recent book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. It's an interesting book. It's a little bit dry because it goes into sort of the bureaucracy of it all. But it turns out that the National Institute for Discovery Science, NIDS, was being financed. I think it wasn't a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things. I think they were allotted like $5 million for Skinwalker Ranch.
That's a
and
lot
other
coming from
related
the Pentagon.
Other related areas.
Why was the Pentagon so interested? Sorry, Ryan.
Oh no, Well, that's a good question, isn't it? I mean, I suppose that they see that
It's
there
something
is
they're
some
never
kind
going to tell you, right? So,
yeah, and there's a possibility as well. I mean, a lot of people in the Pentagon presumably know all about this kind of thing anyway.
mhm.
But whereas NIDS, I'd imagine, are curious, a curious bunch of scientists that are nerds about the paranormal, but they are ignorant in the sense that they're not in on the joke. They're not they don't know what's going on and they're trying to find out, and so they're applying for money and they're doing all this kind of stuff. But the thing is that there's people in the Pentagon that already know the answer to all of these things. And of course, there's people in the American government that know it all, but it's just not out. So the idea that yes, some people in the Pentagon, they already know this, but then now they're going to finance a group to investigate something that they already know. Which suggests perhaps there's a possibility that a scenario where they're going to pretend that we can all now find out together. If groups like NIDS are financed by the Pentagon and they can work stuff out and find stuff out, then there's plausible deniability, and people in the Pentagon that already knew a lot of this stuff can just say, "Oh, wow, that's cool what you've worked out. We're just hearing about it for the first time too.
Yeah.
Yay!" And then they can pretend that they never knew, because that's where they get in trouble, where they have to admit that for the past 80 years they've already known about all this stuff. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, the Mothman.
Yeah.
Ken Keyser. Hi, Ken. Ryan, comments or insight into the Mothman prophecies?
Well, again, I am very predictable.
Yeah.
Mothman is a cultural interpretation of these boa suits. The military suits that the soldiers and guards wear for these Mudgeonah group. The book I wrote has it on the cover, but I know that this is going to be audio to a lot of people, isn't it? But I'll put this up anyway. But if people look on Amazon and look for my book Children of Orion, just to see the front cover at least, that's a good rendition of what they look like. That was done by Mark Randall, who's a very cool dude, by the way, did the artwork for the book, American artist. Sometimes they wear cloaks as well with this gear that they wear. When they levitate, they start to blur over. They become sort of blurry and almost look like they're furry. And then they can levitate. And then usually, though, they don't wear a cloak. And they have a long nose-like appendage, which is that comes up over the top of the helmet, which is for resonating and amplifying sounds, so that they can produce these massively powerful roaring sounds and hoots and things like that to travel over long distances. And they also have a breathing device to keep out. They can breathe our atmosphere, but the breathing device is for allergens, for dust and mites and pollen and things like that. They can be, in constitution, they can be quite sickly. They take a long time to heal. They are allergic to a lot of things that we aren't allergic to, or most of us aren't. But when you see them, and I have seen them a few times, it's Mothman basically, but it's a suit. Highly sophisticated technologies. They can become invisible in them, can pass through solid walls. So a lot of the John Keel stuff was related to the Cryto-Terrestrials, but I have a feeling that there's other elements in the Mothman prophecies that's non-Cryto-Terrestrial. Now, this is a thing as well that happens, I think, with a lot of people that investigate the paranormal and become well known. That counterintelligence initiatives launched by the powers that be, that want to keep these things secret, try to muddy the waters. And I've got a feeling that John Keel was being subjected to, as well as genuine crypto-terrestrial interaction, counterintelligence measures of a big way to try and confuse him, to baffle him. It's my opinion as well that there's a cool series, I recommend people watch it, called Halia. If your audience hasn't seen it before, it's free on YouTube. Bunch of ghost hunters got called out to Eastern Kentucky, where there were reports of pale kids chirping children coming up out of mines and tapping on windows and things. But they launched an investigation. I think there's a couple of series of that. I don't think there's a third
That's
one yet.
crazy. Yeah.
But
It's
but
like, is
but
it similar to like black-eyed children? Like just
they
because they do that too. I don't know where they come
Okay.
from. I don't think they've
No one
established
does.
that, but they go up to the windows and doors and
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
They
yeah, yeah.
wait for an invitation.
wiggy little things.
They are wiggy.
With the Halia investigation, it's like, I, in my opinion, after watching the 2 seasons that exist, the first season, in my opinion, is more interesting because in the second series, I feel personally that the group of ghost hunters were subjected to some kind of counterintelligence. That after they'd made the first season, people in the know found out about them. When they made the second season, there was a hand of disinformation being involved in it. That's just my opinion. But I really recommend people should watch that. It's Greg Newkirk. I can't remember all the names of the people that are in it. But Halia, Hellier, East Kentucky. It's a really cool show.
Okay.
Lots of Mothman Prophecy-esque phenomena in the Halia series. Lots
I'm
of
gonna check that out.
synchronicity, lots of and they did a lot of those things where they have like sensory deprivation. So they'll have a member of their group doing sensory deprivation and covering up their eyes and ears and that kind of stuff.
The ping
And then
pong balls.
other group will, the other members of the group will ask questions and they'll hear responses and things like that.
The way you were talking about the Mothman and that, like the way you were describing it, it brought me back to the film Predator.
Yeah, that's right. They can cloak like that. Now I've seen them cloaking like that, where you can still see like a distortion, like a heat distortion or something.
Yeah.
But sometimes you can't see them at all.
No.
And that's and I'm not sure why sometimes their technology works better than at other times, whether sometimes they want you to be able to see them a little bit, so they deliberately do that, or whether it comes down to different kinds of suits and how advanced they are, because they rely on a lot of our technologies and infrastructure, where a lot of the craft that they build and a lot of the technology that they have is based on our materials and industry, and as Charles Hall writes in his books, some of their craft are made out of stuff that you can get off the shelf at our hardware stores, where they don't necessarily always have ultra sophisticated tech. They brought back with them from their other timeline some stuff that's grown, like biological craft that's grown in 0G atmosphere, craft that are sentient and almost, you'd say they're alive probably. They have some of that as their fleet, but the majority of their fleet is made up of systems, technology, craft, gadgets and toys that are using their advanced science to utilize our technologies to great effect, to really dramatic effect, far beyond anything we could do with our own technologies. But so one of the craft, well, I've been on a couple of them actually, but one of the craft that I was on once had bus seats from our buses in it.
No way.
And the windows and things like that just looked like there was stuff like that we'd have on our buses and things. And the seats for the pilots looked like they were out of our fighter jets. So they utilize our infrastructure because they have a limited infrastructure of their own here. But anyway, so I'm getting off the point here. But so some of that might explain why sometimes their technology works better than at other times. Like sometimes their cloaks seem to be able to cloak perfectly, but then sometimes you'll see them and they look more like the Predator, and that might be because they're simply using an inferior costume.
It's like a glitch, almost like they're glitching.
Yeah.
You said something very interesting from the other timeline. So do you believe that we're having 2 timelines right now?
Yeah. Well, I think there's an infinite amount of timelines, but
yeah,
the way that they work is.
Because I'm not sure I'm liking this one.
I don't think anyone
the other
is.
timeline where things are just cheerier and happier.
It's just so dramatic, this one.
Yeah.
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 I think. Well, it's the kind of time. Like you could say that they are time travelers, if what you mean by time travel is more like Rick and Morty, you know, if I can use a pop culture reference, you know, Rick and Morty traveling between different dimensions, different timelines, different universes. But so what they've done, these beings have done, is that they haven't traveled into their own past. They've gone to another timeline that is identical to the way theirs was many, many tens of thousands of years earlier, to find earlier versions of themselves that are compatible genetically. But they haven't traveled into their own past, and they're not really from our future. So they're really interdimensionals, perhaps you could say. It depends on, so they're not time travelers in that sense, unless that is what you mean by time travel, you know. So really it's about, you know, defining our terms. Like some people might say, well, that's not time travel, so they're interdimensionals. And I'd say, yeah, fair enough. But some people might say, no, okay, that's still a kind of time travel. Maybe that's just the answer to time travel. That's how it's done, and still retain the term time travel.
Some people there are cases of people waking up in their bed and they are in an entirely different timeline. They're dressed in different clothing. They're in a different apartment, yet they go to their job. It's a lot of the same people. There's a woman right now who's got a reward out. This is what happened to her. She went to her job. Her fiance was missing from her life. It's like he never existed. And it was like there was 7 years that she had traveled to. She goes, and she just woke up that way. She went to sleep in one pair of pajamas, woke up in a different pair, and she's looking around and she's been trying to get back to her timeline, and she's offered a reward to anybody that can get her back to her timeline. And that's sad. What do you travel? You're sleeping? Like, what's that about?
That sounds like a nightmare scenario. Imagine if that had happened to you.
Sounds like an episode of Supernatural.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
when they go through the hotel. Yeah.
This happens. There are other reports of people who walk out their front door, walk to the backyard, come in the back door, and they're an entirely different. They're like, wait a minute, where am I?
That's scary. Yeah, oh my gosh, that is scarier than being on a craft.
This is the kind of things that are happening. So are you just walking? It's like I say, we have all these different dimensions and levels in one space, but it's like listening to a radio station. You can only listen to one at a time, you know, unless some of us, we hear all this different clutter. I call it clutter, voices, sounds, things like that, frequencies. But can you imagine you're living it? You just walk out of one room, walk into another one, and what the hell just happened?
That'd be scary stuff.
Sure.
You'd very quickly lose any stability, mental stability. I think if you weren't sure, you walk out your bathroom door, and then you're in Egypt or something. It's incredible stuff. Yeah, they're really spooky kinds of stories from people like that. You also hear about sometimes people just appearing, you know, like bathrooms being empty, definitely empty, and then people walking out of them, and
they just slip through and time slips. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's bizarre but interesting.
Oh yeah, I'll put this one back up. Hold on. There we go. Although, do you want to get that one?
Yes, thank you. Dolly says, all time is relative. You are in this third dimensional timeline. Outside third dimension, no timeline exists.
And then?
Right.
Gravity halts your perception of time as it is. Wow.
Like I was saying before, that's cool, Dolly. Like I was saying before, the Mudgeonah have an idea. Well, they utilize it as well, so it's not just an idea. So you could say, you know, if it works and it's practical, maybe they're right. Which is, it's not just a philosophy, you know, where they have what they call Agaling. Now, I think, which is what translates into English as black star or black sun. The land of the black sun to them is a place where nothing and everything is true. There's neither this nor that. Everything is potential. It's like Ceridwen's cauldron. It's not the actualized world. It is the world. It's the soup of creation. It's neither here nor there. Something comparable to it might be for Star Trek nerds. You know, in Star Trek Generations, the movie that had Kirk and Picard both in it together, and there's this ribbon. There's this weird phenomenon that's called the ribbon, which sort of binds, is sort of between worlds. And if you go into it, you can come back out of it again at any time or any place.
Mhm.
It's sort of like that, but it's not. But it's imperceptible, because once something's perceived, it's actualized. So this is a realm beyond perception that is neither this nor that, and they manipulate it and use it to their advantage to. So in a sense, that is outside timelines. It's all timelines and all possible worlds and none. And
Mhm.
so, because it's not binary, it's not this or that. You know, the real world that's sort of actualized that we know is sort of like a binary world. Binary in the sense that it's this and that. You know, like in a binary language, computer language, what does one mean? One means not zero. What does zero mean? Zero means not one. So they have a definition that is in antithesis to each other. Once you've got two ideas like that are defined in antithesis to each other, you have the building blocks of a language, and you can create a world, and an actual, like, which is what our world kind of is. But this is a world beyond this or that, beyond ones and zeros. It's and if you get access to that world that they call the black star, there's endless supply of energy. I'm not quite sure in what way this is related to ideas of 0 point energy and stuff like that some of our physicists and engineers talk about, whether that's comparable, these concepts. But from their perspective, that's the way they see it. And it's intertwined with their own kind of religious system and spirituality. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all fascinating. I think there are people out there who can manipulate all of that, who can easily, go back and forth. And I think once you learn how to do that, I mean, can you teach it? I don't know. Some people tell you it's like jumping time, right? Jump rooms, things like that.
And Imaginer used technology, like they use technology to achieve these kinds of things. I mean, I would not know how. Like, this is layman stuff for me. I would have no idea how all this works. But just the concepts they've talked about and shown me, in a vague kind of way of images and abstractions and things like that. But yeah. So they're not just doing it with the power of their mind. Well, they are, but it's augmented by sophisticated science.
Yeah. Hold on, we're going. Okay, more Dolly.
You can learn it.
Yeah.
In your own use of innate abilities.
Yeah. I do. Yeah. I mean, I think we only use a very small fraction of our brains. I think we have the capabilities of doing a lot, and we've just been purposely kept subdued, because you can't really subdue super gifted people that can tap into things, or that can travel or do things, that easily. I think this is what some of these government agencies are trying to tap into themselves through gifted people, getting into all these MyLab abductions and things like that.
That's scary.
Very scary. Bingo, thank you, Jake's bow. Dolly. I want to just backtrack a little bit to a question that we had.
Tamara, yes. What do you think of the flying humanoids of Mexico and South America? Excuse me.
Sorry to say that I'm ignorant about that kind of thing. I've heard mention of it, but I've never investigated any of that. So, do you guys know?
Neither have I.
No?
Yeah, well, there's actually a lot of videos that are coming out, and one that I find has been really interesting. And I know, Tamara, this is probably something totally different, but have you guys ever seen a video clip on YouTube? And it looks like it is a witch on a freaking broomstick. Do you know we had one up here in Milton? One of those?
No.
Yeah, and they're spotted all over the world.
Yes,
and it looks like a hag, like a witch.
That's what I thought it was.
Broom. And people are just like, what is this? And they zoom in, and she travels like this.
Yeah, they can't explain it. Steady. No, they've tried to take it apart on software and computer, and they can't. And it's an original image, but they don't know if somebody's up there propelled on something.
Yeah.
They don't really know.
It doesn't look propelled. I mean, unless you can propel a dang broom.
But her garment is hanging over.
That's what it is. A humanoids of Mexico.
Okay,
It's
thanks, Tamara.
We had one in Milton, Tamara.
That's
There was a
crazy.
sighting in
Okay, cool,
freaking
cool.
Mildred.
That's too close to home.
I like it. Is it a drone or a crone? I don't know.
I don't know, but I do know that they scientifically tried to tear it apart and they couldn't. It was not played with. It was not tampered with in any way. So
I would
it's
just
one
try
of
to catch
those
the video,
anomalies
Ryan.
that we'll never really
Yeah.
know. But the people of that town of Mexico believe that it was some sort of hag. That's
Yeah,
what they
it's-
believe. When
it's
they're
kind
speaking,
of-
that's what they're saying.
It's kind
I
of
want to
like-
believe. If it's true, that is so cool.
You Google that little clip, Ryan.
No,
Like
just go on,
you'll
you
be
know,
looking at it going,
one of
what
the places
the
we're streaming
hell?
on that just,
Yeah.
you know, seem to get really annoyed with stuff. But see, this is okay. Well, this is what Dolly says. Okay.
7D hologram. Really? That heck? I don't know. She looked real to me. Yeah.
Of all the holograms you could have, and that's the one you would choose.
That's not the one I would
Yeah.
pick. Yeah.
Like a test image. It's
Yeah.
like these glitches in the Matrix that you see, where you'll see like a plane for a quick moment or a bird stop in dead air. Do we just stop?
Yeah,
Have you
yeah.
seen those?
Yeah, I have, I think. Yeah.
What's your
That's,
take on that?
I don't know.
Glitch in the Matrix?
Yeah, I suppose. Well, something going on there, isn't there? Yeah, bit of a
Wow.
glitch. The program's breaking down somewhere. Bit of bad code in the program. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It makes you wonder when you see things like that. You're just sort of like,
Wow.
are we in a dang Matrix? Seriously.
Well, how does it
Because-
come to a dead stop? That's
Right.
some wicked
Bit of glass.
technology, right?
Yeah.
Tamara says there is a police officer report from Mexico, an interview on YouTube. Look it up. Yes. There's little
Okay.
kids
Yeah.
too speaking because I understand Spanish. So when I'm listening to them, I'm laughing because the captions don't quite follow the speaking,
right.
which is
Right.
very common on YouTube anyways. Dolly says they are placing tech on ground to use against y'all. I love
You're
that.
one of those
Y'all.
y'alls. Where you on?
Y'all,
Valerie?
I love that. I
know,
love that.
her.
That's
love
one
her.
thing I loved was the Southern drawl when I was in Carolinas.
Right.
Linda Dillman says, well, when you think about it, we have the ability to fly, but we have to know with our whole being, if we have a spark of doubt, then we can't fly.
It's
I
true.
don't know.
There
I jumped
have-
off my parents' roof when I was little, and
There's another clip of a guy walking through a forest with his
Yeah.
dog.
Yes,
and
and-
there's a little girl in the
Yeah.
middle of the
Oh,
forest.
yeah.
yeah, I've seen
She's-
that.
And the mother's looking at her like this, and this girl is just doing this. They realize they're being watched.
Yeah,
Down she
and you
goes.
could clearly see
What?
them
Oh, yeah.
panic.
And they
You
run
could
away,
clearly
don't
see
they?
them
Yeah, that's
panic.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
they're like,
do.
and they're gone. They're gone. They don't really run. They kind of just
Yeah.
I know.
it's like because there's a little bend in that park that they're in, and she was up there like a freaking balloon.
I know. You think that
Yeah,
there's one of those
Yeah.
like those big fans underneath her, just
Yeah.
you know.
Yes,
Like,
yes, like skydiving.
yes. So
I-
I don't know.
I have been levitated, so not under my own power, not from,
Right.
not
What did that
superpower
feel
or
like?
believing.
That'd be like
Uh,
a superpower, right?
Really cool. So there's a few times that it's happened. So once I got levitated up over the house and into a craft.
Right.
The next morning, our TV antenna was all twisted around where the craft had been. Another time,
kidding.
levitated down from a craft, upside down, straight through the roof of our kitchen, like the roof wasn't there, like I'd
Mhm.
become intangible in
Mhm.
some way. And two of the mudgeoners were in the kitchen waiting for me, looking up.
See, just like the fourth kind. I'm just saying.
And then, and then another time, I came back inside, and I'd been associating with people. People had been there, but I felt my memory start to pull away as the memories are sort of being wiped or manipulated. But I came into a house at night, and there were other people, there were mudgeoners with me, but then they started moving away, and I started to feel my mind cloud over slightly. But I thought I'll go and check on my daughter, and I checked on her in bed. She was quite young at the time. And I was checking on her in bed. I just started walking around the house and doing things I'd normally do, even though I'd just been taken back from some kind of abduction. But what caused the levitation was I was walking around the house, and then I looked at my feet, and I didn't have my work boots on that are black. I had my wife's that were brown. And I thought, my critical mind kicked in. I was like, hold on a sec, I'm wearing the wrong boots. As soon as I thought that, I levitated, got turned onto my side, and they took me back. and put me back into bed, and I lay back down, and then I got up again and went to the bathroom in the morning, and I didn't have the boots on anymore. And in the morning when I looked, my wife's boots were neatly next to the door, and my boots were off underneath a couch, off underneath a sofa. So that I think what had happened is when they'd taken me, because they mesmerize you, manipulate your mind, and they could sort of put you into hypnosis. When I'd come outside to go with them in the dark, I put on the wrong boots because my boots were off under a couch. So it wasn't until my critical functioning started kicking in and I started thinking, hold on a sec, this is wrong. My boots are wrong. I shouldn't be up in the middle of the night. What is happening to me? They were like, oh, okay, that's enough. We'll just put him back to bed. He's starting to make trouble, you know. But and then another time I got up in the middle of the night and I went out into the lounge room and I could hear something up over the house, and then I started levitating again. Yeah, so the levitation, and then there was another time where I'd been talking to a mudgeoner in our kitchen and then started to feel a cloudy, sort of nebulous feeling in my head. I knelt down, I crawled out of the kitchen, and then I started levitating again. So when they're taking me or returning me, there's this levitation done. And you just start floating like you're in water and turning on your side, and they move you around if you're not complying properly, or if you're, becoming critically minded again. But anyway.
No, for sure. We have to do a quick station and sponsor ID.
You like that subtle hint?
Yes. Do it.
Yes. You are listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and myself, Amelia Pisano, coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans on 105.3 FM radio. Tonight we have back special guests, Ryan Musgrave Evans. Always a pleasure and so easy to listen to. Stream or listen to our archives and the platform that you normally use. Shout out and thank you to the amazing people at Folgers Coffee for fully sponsoring our show from day one. We love you and we thank you so much. Also, a huge shout out and thank you for our intro and outro from Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, Justin Snicker, award-winning composer and musician. You can find his music on Amazon and Bandcamp, and you can also find him on social media on Instagram and Facebook.
There we go.
Yay.
So, hey, Mike. So, Linda, do you want to get that one? Bubbles?
Yes, sorry, just caught that. David Blaine levitates, but I think he tells people they have to believe he is levitating. Interesting.
Yeah, I do think that we have the power to do that. I know Tamara was saying the same thing, that she could see monks, she's watched clips of monks hovering and levitating.
Yes.
Did you see that? They kind of bounce.
Monks are amazing.
Yeah, like how much discipline,
They do the whole double throat thing and the meditative where they spend their whole lives meditating. We really don't understand where meditation takes us as a society. We're really, I want to say, almost commercial about it, picking up something from YouTube. We don't practice it like they do. So we don't really know unless we talk to and have the honor of speaking with one, where they really go.
Absolutely.
It's incredible.
So getting back a little bit to your crypto-terrestrials, when you think of these beings, they are basically coming in and out of portals. Is this why we just never see them?
Yeah, well, they do that, but they can also be invisible through their technologies. They can also, you can also have seen them, and they suggest to you haven't seen them. Do a bit of a Jedi mind trick on you with their technologies. They can tell you that they look like owls. They can tell you that they look like someone that you know. Or they can tell you can't see them at all. But sometimes they also have the power in their suits to literally become invisible. So they have have lots of different tools. If you accidentally see one when you're not supposed to, well, you probably won't remember that. You won't remember that you ever saw them. But and portals, they do use portals. Now they usually. If something comes through a portal, there's normally a sound. Well, that's what I've found anyway. There will be a crack or a click, and then if
Sounds
you
like
hear it,
static.
yeah, like a real, and the larger the object, the more mass an object has coming through, the louder that will be. So if you hear a real crash in your house and you think something's broken, something's fallen, and there's nothing, it can be like a few individuals coming through or a larger piece of technology. A whole craft coming through will usually make a boom, like a sonic boom, a really loud noise. But it's not a sonic boom. I don't know what it is, because their craft flies through the sky.
Several times.
Through the house. I
Yeah.
did, yeah.
It wasn't ET for me, but
No, but here,
it's
yeah,
happened to
something
me.
went right through the
Been a little
house.
bit darker
Yeah.
than
Yeah,
that for
right,
me.
right.
Yeah.
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 And then there's another aspect of when they are when they're using a portal, so they're not really present quite, but they're looking through the Agaling, the black star. They're seeing you, but they're somewhere else, and you'll hear a tick. So it almost sounds like a clock,
Yep.
but you can't see it. There's no source.
Mhm.
Now, like some countries in the world have insects that make clicking sounds and ticking
Mhm.
clock-like
Yeah.
sounds anyway. But
Right.
also, so just because you hear that doesn't necessarily mean that's happening. I don't want to make people too paranoid, but it can be them doing that. And then also there's sometimes, but not always, there'll be a smell like sulfur or rotting flesh when objects come through these portals, and it's something to do with the effect that this technology has on the atmosphere surrounding the portal, and that smell can stick to them, but is not from them. It's just the act of going through the portal, and it can remain on them for a little while. So this is like the old fire and brimstone, where sometimes you'll see paranormal creatures and they'll have this smell, is part of the portal. It's a legacy. It's a residue of this kind of portal traveling.
Yeah, like the demonic theory.
Can I just
Yeah.
sorry. Thank you. I wanted to ask you this question. It just popped into my head right now. Do you have any understanding as to why they've abducted you?
Well, I don't really know. Like I've asked them this kind of stuff. Because they have what I call prophetic technologies. They have technological advancements that allow them to peer ahead into possible futures, potential realities, and behave accordingly, so that there will be a particular outcome that they want that's positive for them, and it can be like long term, over the next few years, maybe even next centuries or whatever. And they're manipulating reality in that sense, and I call it piloting reality, like people pilot a TV series by releasing an episode, or when you pilot a research project, where you do a test, they can look into the future and decide what course of action to take here, then there, if that, then this, then that, then this. So it's like they're playing a game of chess, many, many, many moves ahead, always. And when they interact with some people and don't interact with other people, the reason is not necessarily that clear, because the answer may lie centuries from now. So I mean, I don't know. To put a long story short, that their motivations are mysterious to me. I do get along with them. I enjoy their sense of humor. I'm not frightened. Now, I don't know whether that's because they've manipulated me to suggest to me not to be frightened. I certainly was frightened when I was a little kid sometimes, and also just about 10 years ago when a few things were happening, I was quite fearful. But they rebuked me for that. And they even said that's weak. They told me at one stage, they said, "Do not be frightened. This is weak."
Wow.
We roll our eyes at you. One of them said to me at one stage as well, where they appreciate courage. Now, it's a lot to ask a person to be courageous in some of these situations, especially when they let their mental manipulation allow it to lax a little bit. So if they're controlling your mind and they're making you apathetic, so that you're in a situation where you'd normally be frightened or normally thinking it's a strange thing to be hanging out with an 8-foot tall blonde dude in your kitchen, you don't have the normal reaction. You're like, this is normal. After it's finished, you go, holy, that wasn't normal. And then a fear response might kick in. So sometimes they can manipulate your mind to make you apathetic. But if they start to relinquish that and allow you to get your faculties back, and you automatically start responding with fear, that can annoy them sometimes, especially if they've been interacting with you for a long time.
Yeah.
but they're all individuals, and some of them can be more manipulative than others, have, you know, senses of humor that are unfortunate. Other ones are much more caring, nurturing, compassionate individuals, just like us, you know.
Mm-hmm. No, it's like every society. Oh yeah, so I'll put that back up for you.
Oh.
It's like every society. You have your good, you have your bad, right?
That's right, and it's the same with them for sure.
Yeah.
After I read this, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay, go
Thanks,
ahead.
Michelle. Thank you. Dolly says your mind is running, excuse me, your perception of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, they do rely on your own preconceived notions of what exists in the world, your own belief system, your own vocabulary of ideas, and they can hide and play within that, you know, if they choose to, you know. But yeah, so they are reliant, taking from your own mind, you know, what would be the word I want? Sort of like they're getting inspiration from your understanding to mask themselves, sometimes. So they can pretend to be people that you know. They can even pretend to be people that you've known that are no longer with us.
Oh.
So you might think you're talking to your beloved granny. You know, you wake up in the middle of the night and your granny's at the fridge getting milk, and she says, "Go back to sleep, honey." And you're like, "Hold on a sec. Granny passed away 5 years ago." That could very well have been one of them.
Wow.
Giving you something, an image of a person that you would find, you know, calming and soothing. And then you go back off to bed. And then when your critical faculties kick back in, you go, "Hold on a sec. That was a bit wrong." You know,
Right.
but yeah.
I have a question for you. I can't remember what I ate yesterday, so I don't remember. I have short-term memory loss, actually. I'm just wondering, forgive me if I've asked you this before. Is anyone in your family, like your parents or siblings or relatives, have these experiences the way you have?
Well, I'm one of 6 children, so I've got a few siblings.
Yeah.
Only one of my siblings is younger than me. Most of them are a fair bit older. And I'm not quite sure about them, and I have talked to them about my experiences, and they haven't said anything.
Yeah.
But my parents have.
Okay.
And my dad, when he was a kid, saw a tall, dark figure peering in his window at one stage. He remembers seeing. And he also had an experience where he was lying in bed and an invisible person sat on the edge of the bed and leant over to him and giggled into his ear. And he freaked out. And he's also seen UFOs. And my mother used to have experiences sometimes where she'd feel hands on her in the middle of the night and people doing things to her feet and stuff like that. Like maybe I've had a lot of that kind of stuff as well. Sometimes you wake up mid-procedure where they're actually doing something to you. So yeah, that both of my parents have. And also things going missing. You know, a typical sort of Mudgeonor interaction. They can be tricksters, but they're also curious about our world. They'll steal things, but they usually return them. And so,
That's
you
funny.
know, books going missing.
Some
I've
people
heard
call
that.
that like gremlin behavior.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, gremlins
Yes.
do that.
Something going missing, and it's not there. And then when it's returned, it's put back in a place that you would definitely have seen it, or it's exactly where it should be, or whatever.
Or they put
that
your
kind of
clothes on
thing.
backwards when they bring you back.
I haven't had that one, but
Yeah. Question for you. Go ahead, Amelia.
Thank you, Michelle. Dolly says, Ryan, how's your ESP ability? Are you wide awake conscious?
Well, I don't know necessarily where I begin and they end, and vice versa. Where I have had a lot of ESP like ability over my life, but I'm not quite sure if it's them telling me stuff. You know, like for instance, I've been saved by something at certain stages. A couple of times, probably would have died, but I'm not quite sure sometimes if it's me having some kind of precognitive thing or it's assistance. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know how to answer that. I would have thought when I was younger that yes, I would have definitely said yes to that. I would have said, yeah, I think I've got a bit of precognition. I get these sort of abstract or sometimes visual images in my mind just before things happen of the scene that's about to happen and things like that. Like a person that I'm about to see and then I do see them and all that kind of stuff. But nowadays, I'm less sure if that's got anything to do with me.
Right.
And maybe more to do with them guiding me, interacting with me, communicating, manipulating me. Sometimes, intrusive thoughts and things like that can sometimes be theirs. So yeah, I'm not sure.
Dolly says, so it's time you develop your ability.
And we have another question also.
Yes,
Okay.
Linda Dillman says, so when someone is on a ghost hunt, the banging you hear is energy coming through a wall or something solid. I'd like to know who keeps knocking on my door at nighttime. That would require an investigation.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to the Mudgeonah, they communicate with each other sometimes through knocking on trees, knocking on walls, where it's a kind of a code, so that they don't have to make a sound themselves. They can do this kind of thing sometimes, I think. But
it's like projection, like just projecting energy, like
no, just physically knocking on things because they're
right.
there,
Okay, physically.
Does Bigfoot do that, or do they respond to it? I can't remember.
Oh no, they'll tree tap.
People do say that
They'll
Bigfoot
tree tap. Yeah,
does that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
this is but again, I'll return to being boring. A lot of Bigfoot interactions with the Mudgeonah, like for instance, the Sierra Sounds. I think last time I was on, I talked about this. The Sierra Sounds that were recorded by Al Berry and Ron Moorhead in the Sierra Nevada mountains in the 70s are definitely Mudgeonah. Definitely not Bigfoot. They're tall whites. I've heard them speak in that kind of guttural, it almost sounds like Japanese. That's their natural language. When they're speaking animal sounds, their camouflage languages, they can sound like what I was talking about earlier, dogs, birds, monkeys, and all this kind of stuff. Now, the Sierra Sounds is a mixture of their natural language and camouflage tongues, camouflage languages, like their own cryptolects. Their code. That's just a wonderful recording that was done. They're code mixing. You hear them switching between their natural language. Now, I've heard them speak their natural language and switch away from the animal sounds a bit. And yeah, it sounds just like that. It sounds just like that. If you didn't know, in fact, I thought it was Japanese. In the early days when I used to hear them talking, sometimes when they'd come and they'd be like shadow people moving around and you hear them talking in what I thought was Japanese. I was like, what the fuck? Well, sorry.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We have a delay on FM.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay. One we're
brain,
okay. The second one we're about $25,000 US in, but one is good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just and then as I came to realize this was not Japanese, it was something else. Then when I stumbled across the Sierra Sounds, when I was watching the David Paulides documentary, The Hunted, and in that he interviews Ron Moorhead on site, and they're playing a bit of the Sierra Sounds. I was like, wow, that's definitely them. So, I sometimes some paranormal phenomena that's associated with Sasquatch and is interpreted as being evidence for the existence of Sasquatch,
right,
is actually them. Which is not to say that Sasquatch doesn't necessarily exist, but just certain things that have been placed. Like normally, the Sierra Sounds is either thought of as being evidence for the existence of Bigfoot. So it's either fake, or if it's real, then Bigfoot's real. Well, no, it's the third one. It's real, and it's not Bigfoot. It's these dudes. So
Look, I mean, people are casting, footprints and everything when it comes to Bigfoot. Hair samples are finding.
That's true as well. Yeah,
they're getting more and more. Well, there's also behaviors like the nests that they make, and they do them in specific ways.
Right.
So yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you make of that? It's like,
Yeah, it's difficult to say, isn't it? And it's interesting that it just seems to be a universal thing as well. It's that so many different unconnected cultures have these creatures, these large hairy hominids in their folklore.
yeah.
It's quite impressive, you know. But then again, as well, some of them I think are probably some manifestations of beings that look like that might be these TLFs I was talking about that have more to do with the crypto-terrestrials using some kind of fake tool. In the Colorado ranch case that we were talking about before, not only did the rancher meet two fair beings with big eyes, but there was a cube on the ground. I left this out before. There was a cube on the ground, and while he's standing there talking to these two entities, a Bigfoot. This is in the his testimony anyway. A Bigfoot-like creature wandered out of the trees, went to pick up the cube, and then just fell on the ground, dead maybe or incapacitated anyway.
Wow.
And the fair beings said to the rancher, "You see, don't touch these cubes. They are lethal." So they'd expressed to him earlier, "Don't touch these." And it was almost like they used the Bigfoot as an example of what not to do. So now the idea that Bigfoot was a real creature with a life of its own makes that story seem incredibly cruel. But if the Bigfoot was some kind of biological robot or creation,
Right.
then it's a different story, perhaps. He's just being used as a cautionary tale, you know, what not to do. But yeah, that's good. I don't know about whether or not Bigfoot's real. Lots of people definitely believe in Bigfoot and wholeheartedly and sincerely and genuinely say that they've seen them and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people putting a lot of time, money, and energy into trying to figure it out.
Sure.
I think there's just so many. I think it's because it's the one that's most often seen. Like let's just go off and talk about lake monsters for now. You know, they're all over the world, and the most famous, of course, is Nessie, the Loch Ness monster. What is your thought on that? Because is that a crypto-terrestrial? Like they've done samples in the water. They don't think that they've done sonar. They've done everything. They don't think that it can sustain a creature that big for long periods of time, especially with food or shelter, anything of that nature.
Yeah,
you know, beam me up, Scotty. Portal. What is that? It's like,
why not? Why not in the water?
If it was some kind of unreal thing like a TLF, like some kind of biological creation, then you would ask the next question would be why? You know, what would be the motivation? But because you know, when we're talking about giant hominids, giant wolves, giant dogs, sort of dinosaur-like creatures that are seen at Skinwalker Ranch and other places, those things seem to have an impact on people, and they're scary, I suppose. With Loch Ness Monster, people see it off at a distance, but it's not necessarily threatening, is it? I mean, there are reports of it breaking boats, maybe, and things like that as well. But
it's also one of those areas that seem to be, and again, we go back to the Aleister Crowley, who specifically wanted this location because of the fact that, paranormally speaking, it was very active. Same with UFOs, same with cryptids. It apparently was one of those spots that had everything.
Right. Okay, so it's like a real eerie place. Yeah, it's.
Well,
I think it's a phenomenal
place. Yeah. It's quite beautiful, but it's I don't know. It's just one of those places where you have a good mix of literally everything. So I don't know. I don't know. But as we're slowly, coming towards the top of the hour, why don't you tell everybody what you have coming up, what you're up to, promote the book, how to find you.
Yeah, cool.
Go.
Yeah. So my book, Children of Orion: Finding the Crypto-Terrestrials, is published by Phil Mantle at Flying Disc Press, and it's on Amazon, paperback, hardback, and digital Kindle. And I'm working diligently on the second book, which should be out early next year. and that's going to, well, it has a huge amount of extra cases. I'm building what I call the CT profile further on, Crypto-Terrestrial profile, compendium of characteristics through cases to build a bigger and bigger and clearer picture of who these beings are and what they are. And I've got my YouTube channel, which is just my name, if people are interested in looking at that as well, Ryan Musgrave Evans. And I'll very quickly, because you mentioned Aleister Crowley, I'll just jump off just very, very quickly. That reminds me, Aleister Crowley, infamous occultist. People who are interested in ufology will be aware of him, probably because in a ritual he allegedly came into contact and sort of manifested a being and did a sketch of it, and the being looks a lot like what we'd say was a grey nowadays, with a huge head and things like that. And people have made that connection where maybe he had summoned what we would call an ET now, or now that is impressive, that one. But what blew me away was another esotericist, Rudolf Steiner.
Yes.
And I used to only know him because I was a school teacher. I only really knew Rudolf Steiner from his educational theories and curricula and things like that. I didn't realize in his later life he had this whole other side to him where he was an occultist and an esotericist, and he really came up with a religion, his own religion, anthroposophy, which there are a lot of people that still practice it. And he was such a prestigious writer, but he was such a polymath where he was just excelled at so many different things, and he did sculptures of what he called Ahriman or Ahrimanic beings. And I just saw these sculptures, probably the first time I saw it was 6 months ago, or maybe not quite a year ago, I'm not quite sure. And I was blown away by how similar they are in appearance to the Majina. Now, he was calling them Ahriman and Ahrimanic beings, and he did sketches. He also did a sculpture. And what was particularly impressive to me was the hand. The hand of the Ahrimanic being is very similar to the hands of the Majina, where they have 2 fingers to one side and then like a split, and 2 fingers on the other side. And they have prehensile fingers that oppose. Their four fingers oppose each other. And then their thumb is vestigial and largely pointless. But so I don't know what's going on there. In my opinion, Rudolf Steiner was probably a crypto-terrestrial experiencer as well. I could see that.
Right? Yeah, I can see that. I think people who have really profound experiences you just go on that journey where you want to learn so much more, and you go both sides of the coin. Like you look at even Christopher Lee, the actor who passed like ages ago. A lot of people don't realize, they look at him as this amazing actor. He was a musician. He had a large library and an occultist.
Yeah.
Right. Like people like, what? Yeah. He just had this like amazing persona, but he was just really, there are people who look at the occult and they right off the bat, like, oh, you're practitioners of all the evil stuff. It's like, no, it's an ancient knowledge. It really is. It's people have just, we're just such tunnel vision, in this day and age. We have tunnel vision. We don't really look at everything, and we surely don't research the origins, because we would not be looking and saying some of the things that we do if we did.
That's true. For sure. For sure.
But thank you so much for coming on. We always just so enjoy having you on. You're a lot of fun. A lot of knowledge.
Such great fun. Thanks, guys.
Oh, you can tell you're a natural born teacher, because when you speak, you captivate us. Like you just draw us right in. Nice. I could listen to you for hours. Thank you.
Thanks so much. That's a nice compliment. But I miss you guys. We don't see each other enough.
We'll have to do it again.
Do it again. Maybe touch on Aleister Crowley a little bit.
There we go.
That would be very cool. Yeah, talking about some of the esotericists, Blavatsky, Steiner. Yeah,
that would be fun.
I think that paves the way for something entirely different. Just send me some info and give me something to build on, and we'll look at it, and we'll definitely do this again. I love it. So I will email you.
Adriana, very cool. Learned
Thanks
a
so
lot.
much.
Me too, Adriana. Me too.
All right.
I always do. Ken
Thank you,
Keiser says,
Ryan.
enjoyed the show. Thanks, Ryan. Have
Thanks
a
so
good
much,
day
guys.
and stay out of the cold.
That's right.
I will. Thank you.
Right.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Well, we've come to the end of another fantastic segment. It's always fantastic when Ryan is on the show with us. He's just a lot of fun. He's so easy to listen to, lots of knowledge, and really digs deep, you know. So thank you. Big thank you to Ryan for joining us. Thank you to Folgers Coffee, as always, for being, you know, best sponsor ever. And big thank you to Dr. Snick for your voice, your music. We love you and we appreciate you guys so much. So remember, stop by all of our YouTube channels, International Public Radio, UFO Paranormal Radio, UFO Gods, Extraterrestrials, and go, you know, check us out too at the Outer Realm. And if you like the content, please subscribe. We really appreciate it. We appreciate the, you know, the support, and we appreciate all of you hanging with us each and every week. Tomorrow is going to be a lot of fun, actually, because we are doing, back by popular demand, just saying, we're doing another roundtable conversation because freaking heck, we've got things to freaking talk about. Let me tell you
Boy,
what.
do we ever.
See,
You don't want to miss it because
That's
I
right.
got smoke coming out of my ears. Just saying.
Oh my God. Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. And of course, chat room is going to be open and we're going to have a full-on discussion. So make sure that you are joining us. You don't want to miss it. So have yourselves all a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow night. Good night.